There are many good answers to the question of why God made humanity, but there is one answer at the center of God's creation narrative. In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we see why I'm here, why you are here. We are all created to work. I don't doubt that some of you will have reacted strongly to that suggestion. Perhaps your daily work is tedious or dull or unfulfilling, and maybe your managers are frustrating or your colleagues difficult. Perhaps your career seems to be at a dead end, or you sense you were created and gifted to do something other than what you are currently doing. Maybe you would love to work, but you can't find a job, or you have a disability that prevents you from working. We will certainly get to the frustration of work, but before we do, we need to see work as God originally designed it. Let's focus on 2 verses that specifically explain to us why God created this world and placed men and women in it. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over every living thing that moves on the earth." In the masterful account of creation in Genesis, the pinnacle of God's creation is this moment where God makes beings in his own image. And that phrase, "in his image," is very significant, as we will see. Because everything that comes before these verses is about God, who is himself a worker. People often miss this. God could have revealed himself as the great mind or intellect behind the universe. He could have shown himself as the great power behind all things. He is, of course, both of these things. But what we see in the first chapter of Genesis is a God who is first and foremost a worker. He considers, he plans, he works carefully and purposefully. He doesn't just snap his fingers and bring the universe fully formed into being. He builds and creatively develops something that is beautiful and interconnected and is filled with purpose and meaning. So we should not be surprised that when he creates men and women, you and I, in his image, we too are by very nature workers. To human beings, God gives 5 commands. Did you notice them? Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. These could be further distilled into 3 central ideas. God calls us to create, to collaborate, and to cultivate. Here in Genesis, God makes beings in his own image. He places those beings into his creation and calls them to go to work in these 3 ways. This offers a brief definition for us as we think about our own work. Work is creation, collaboration, and cultivation. Let's think about each of them now. In one sense, the command to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth is quite obvious. Central to our creative work is making babies. And this may surprise you, but that is the command God leads with as he lays out the purpose for why you and I are here. Therefore, our definition of work and vocation must include those who spend their days raising children. Our culture has this wrong. Those who spend the majority of their hours working to raise children are of great significance. The care, teaching, and love of children made in the image of God is integral to why God created us. But the picture of work as creation in Genesis 1 and 2 goes far beyond children. In chapter 2, verse 15, we are told, "The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it." Later, God created the woman to be man's helper in this task of working and keeping the garden. This is the context to which the command to fill the earth is given to the man and the woman. The man and the woman are given the garden, called to work and keep it, and to fill the earth. God is telling Adam and Eve to take the garden and expand it into all of creation. God's intention in creating human beings was to see the realities and potential of the garden fill the whole earth. This means more than simply the expansion of human species and the cultivation of plants, but the expansion of human society and culture. The implication of this for us is huge. Any job or piece of work that builds, strengthens, or expands human society is fulfilling God's command for work as creation. The stay-at-home spouse is not just raising children, they are expanding the future and potential of human society. The counselor is not just listening to people's problems, but is strengthening human society. The construction crew is not just stacking bricks, they are creating new homes, workspaces, and environments for the flourishing of human society. The plumber is not just fixing a toilet, but creating a sanitary society where others can flourish and, yes, flush. Work is creation, the expansion of human flourishing into all of God's creation. Work is not just creation, it is also cooperation. For implicit in God's creation design of human beings is that we are to mirror and image the triune God who made us. Work is collaboration in two ways: collaboration with God and collaboration with one another. In ancient times, the standard practice of kings was to set up images of themselves in faraway conquered lands. And those statues were put there as a notice to the people to remind them that while their king may not be physically close to them, he is still very much in charge. Likewise, God has placed this image all over his creation, you and me. When you look into the face of another human being, you see a reminder of the true Creator King, who sustains and is sovereign over his creation. He has placed us here to expand his reign, to represent his rule, and to announce who is truly king. Our work is a collaboration with his rule when we work at things that reflect his true nature, his justice, righteousness, peace, and beauty. So lawyers who represent the marginalized and mistreated are collaborating with the God of mercy and righteousness in their work. Prosecutors who bring abusers and cheats to judgment are co-laboring with the God of justice and compassion in their work. Police officers who work to maintain peace in their communities are collaborating with the God of peace. Designers who create works of beauty are co-laboring with a God who dwells in the beauty of holiness and who created the first piece of art in his creation. But our work is not just collaboration with God. Our work is a collaboration with one another. This is why in Genesis chapter 2, God declares everything good except for the man being alone. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." So God's command to create, collaborate, and cultivate is given to both man and woman, signaling not just the importance of the marriage relationship, but that central to our work is cooperation with others. Adam not only needed a companion, he needed a co-worker. What does work as cooperation with others look like? To answer that question, it is key that we look more deeply into two of the imperatives given to Adam and Eve: to fill the earth and to have dominion, which leads us into work as cultivation. Third, work as cultivation. What does God mean when he calls humanity to have dominion over the earth? This is widely misunderstood. Both of the Hebrew words that we translate subdue and have dominion are used of those who rule or who have authority over those under their charge. It's easy to think of this as being very negative, that we control the earth in order to destroy it. But looking at Genesis chapters 1 and 2, this responsibility has two very positive components: cultivation and stewardship. Work is cultivation because that is a reflection of who God is and what he does. In Genesis 1, verse 2, the earth is without form and void. But God takes that formlessness and brings order, function, and beauty out of it: day and night, land and sea, sky and earth, filling it all with animals, plants, and life. Likewise, God places Adam in a garden, which is full of formlessness and potential, and Adam's task is to harness and cultivate that potential so that it will grow and blossom. Interestingly, Genesis 2, verse 5 implies that the earth needs humanity to subdue it, that a world without mankind would be wild and chaotic and undeveloped. By itself, the garden is unworked and full of unfulfilled potential. But with humanity, the earth has potential for flourishing and community. Second, our task of exercising dominion is one of stewardship, and good stewards work to maximize the potential of the assets in which they are put in charge. Some have feared that Genesis 1 and 2 gives license for human beings to destroy creation or use it however we see fit. But Genesis 1 and 2 is saying exactly the opposite. It is a call to steward the natural resources God has so graciously given. But good stewards do not let resources sit untouched, but set them to work for the benefit of others. Likewise, the world is full of potential to enable human beings to live, grow, and thrive. And our task is to steward that potential in a way that honors God's sovereign kingship and produces human flourishing. We could summarize our task as rearranging the raw material of God's creation in such a way that it helps the world in general, and people in particular, to thrive and grow. For example, the barista in your favorite coffee shop takes the raw materials of milk, coffee, beans, and perhaps some sugar, and creates a drink that enhances the lives of others. Imagine some people without their morning coffee. Or think of how a teacher takes the raw materials of ideas and truths in, say, mathematics or geography, and teaches their students how those ideas can enhance their lives and the lives of those around them. The Genesis account gives us a beautiful picture of what we were created for that can change the way we fundamentally think about our lives.